how do you take the tools that exist and build new stories, build new practices out of the tools that already exist?
Great question. And unfortunately, I don't think Buddhism has the answer to that.
All right. Well, it's been nice chatting with you. And we thought you had some answers. You got so many books, but...
I mean, I think Buddhism has a lot to say, but basically what it comes down to, it's a lot about how to do what you do rather than what to do. And it makes sense. Look, I mean, the Buddha lived Iron Age India 2,400 years ago, right? I mean, he didn't have a climate emergency. He didn't have the kind of sixth great extinction event or capitalism or nuclear weapons or plastic. I mean, it's just, those were not his problems. And so we shouldn't be surprised that Buddhism doesn't really give us specific answers. The point of the Bodhisattva path, though, is I think it has a great deal to say in terms of whatever we decide to do, how to do it, right? I mean, here in Boulder, for example, one of my good friends is a retired banker who has he's himself a Zen teacher, but he also has the very special ability from his background to talk to Republicans. So he goes to Congress and he lobbies for a carbon tax, in effect. I have another good friend here who is very good at helping us reduce our individual carbon footprint. He helped my wife and I get an energy audit in our house when we bought this one, right? I have a background as kind of activist. I was a draft resistor during the Vietnam War era, and so I believe in nonviolent resistance. And so I've gravitated to things like Extinction Rebellion. Now, which of those is a Buddhist? I mean, in a way, they all are. I mean, the important thing, and probably there's lots more that are needed as well. Those are just three examples. What I think the Bodhisattva path has to offer is, first of all, what I already said, that we need to bring together our individual practice with our engagement, because the individual practice gives us the kind of equanimity or grounding that I think we need to engage in some very, very difficult work, which is often frustrating, right? And there are certain things that are built into that Bodhisattva path in terms of, for example, of avoiding the kind of dualism where we get the idea somehow we're the good guys and they're the evil ones, and the point is to destroy them, right? The Bodhisattva path, you know, that's a kind of Abrahamic duality, as I said earlier. The Buddhism doesn't see the world in terms of good and evil. It sees it in terms of, well, lots of delusion, webs of delusion that we're all tending to have a place in. So when you keep that in mind, it does make a difference in terms of how you relate to people. Sometimes you simply have to stop them, what they're doing. But it's not about insulting them or, I mean, I'm really reminded and inspired by Gandhi, right? I mean, Gandhi, when you looked at how we related to the English, he never despised them. You know, he was educated in England. He had a lot of respect for the British, and he knew that there were so few of them and so many Indians that at a certain point they were going to have to leave India, and they did. So I think that's the kind of attitude. That's not to say that we don't need sometimes to do some very strong nonviolent things, right? The thing that stands out most for me about the Bodhisattva approach is that because of the grounding in some kind of contemplative practice, in the equanimity that brings, Bodhisattvas are able to act without attachment to results, which is easy to misunderstand. Given the way that the Buddha and Buddhism emphasizes motivations and intentions, it's very easy to think, well, all that's important is my motivation rather than whether something is actually achieved. That misses the point of it, right? At the heart of the Bodhisattva path is the idea that we feel called upon to do the very best that we can, not knowing if anything we do makes any difference whatsoever. And that's really huge. And that's tough to do. As I say, that's really, really tough to do unless you have some grounding in the practice, which helps us, get in touch with the here and now. Helps us get in touch with that dimension where there's no better and no worse, no gain and no loss. And so it's really, we don't know if what we do is important, but it's really important for us to do it. And when we're thinking in particular about the earth, one way to say this is that this is our gift to the earth. The earth is calling upon us or acting through us. This is our gift. And like any real gift, you don't give a gift because you want something in return. Our activism, we just do it because it's the right thing to do. I think it was Wendell Berry who said, we don't have the right to ask if we're going to be successful. The only thing we have a right to do is to do the right thing. What do we have to do for us to be able to live on this earth? What is the earth calling on us to do? So that's where I think is the real strength of the Bodhisattva path. And I think that's really needed today. And that's not to deny grief either. I think experiencing grief is really essential at this point, because if we're denying our grief, I think we're sort of disempowered. We're repressing something really important, in a way, we're afraid to feel our grief because we're not sure what we can do, and because it looks really bad for those who really make an effort to sort of, look at the way things actually are. And the kind of grounding that I'm talking about in terms of Bodhisattva path, I think that is the way through that, It's like if you can ground yourself in that contemplative dimension, it doesn't stop you from doing the very best that you can. We need to do that. But nonetheless, unless we have that grounding, we're going to get blown away by everything that happens.